Okay. Can anyone hear me? Since I'm echoing here.
Oof.
Yes, we can hear you. We can also hear the echo.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So today we'll be looking at Angular CLI. And let me adjust my screen. All right, we're looking at Angular CLI. Why Angular CLI? In today's development and it is very important. And if, as a developer, you want to develop, or you want to maintain, or want to debug, knowing how things work behind the scene.
Sorry, your network, your voice is going a bit minty now. Can you increase your volume, sir? Sorry.
All right, thank you for that feedback. Can you hear me clearly now?
Better.
Yes.
All right, so looking at Angular CLI, why Angular CLI? We're considering Angular CLI because we want to have some good knowledge of how things work behind the scene. Of course, there's some geeky pleasure in knowing how things work behind the scene. Of course, that will make us to not only develop great apps, but also be able to maintain, debug as well. So Angular CLI, what will be our content in this section? Number one, we'll just look at the overview of the Angular CLI, touch a bit commands, then we'll look at the Angular schematics. Then we'll also look at the engine room of the Angular CLI actually, which is based on the Angular JSON file. And we'll be looking at that being the third step we take in this presentation. All right, look at our objectives. What we want to get at the end of this presentation. We want to see the role of CLI for project components and services. Then we'll look at the role of Angular schematics. Then we'll drill into the Angular JSON content. Okay, Angular CLI, just as I've introduced earlier, it's a command line interface actually, and it's a tool for building, developing, scaffolding, and maintaining, even testing Angular applications. And since it's a tool, which means it should make work easy, because that's the essence of a machine actually, or a tool is to make work easy. Why should I use my hand to drive a nail into a wood when I can actually get a hammer to do that easily for me? Why should I lift up some bags of cement when I can even get some tools and equipment that will do it easily for me? But not just using a tool that is easy, but understanding the tools and how the tools work will help you to build beautiful. But after building, maintaining, debugging, having a proper knowledge of how it works will help you overcome all those hurdles. All right, with CLI, we can build virtually everything in Angular, from project component services, pipes, till schematics. Whatever I can think of, you can build with CLI. Now, the community, Angular community, look at it, being the robust nature of Angular and the way the architecture, they design it, which can support a huge enterprise app. The configurations and development, setting up the development environment could be that tedious. So the Angular CLI have to emerge so that the developer can develop easily from the command line interface. So with CLI, we'll create projects, we'll create components, we'll create services as well. So for a project, Of course, you all know what a project is. It encapsulates what, just as our project managers, they manage projects and the rest. This is actually the project I'm talking about, not any more technical project. So, but with the CLI, we develop raise a project, and before we proceed with that, we need to install the Angular CLI, which you are seeing in the command here, npm install -g, showing global installation on your machine. Then at Angular/CLI. We can also proceed to put a specific version at the end, but this will give us at least the latest version. Then to start a new project with the command ng-new, then we can give our project name, whatever we call it, and the CLI goes into action to generate the project for us. Just like you know, or maybe you may not know, be informed now that Angular is all about components. Components, everything. Star rating page can be component. Product page can be component. Services page can be component. Cost center page can be component. Everything can be component in Angular. I can have up to 50 components based on the level of the application. All right, with the command to generate a component, just use ng generate component, then the component name. It generates a component for you. And if we're talking about components, it's just a number of files, TypeScript files, some HTML files, and some CSS files as well. Then one other file for testing. So that is just when we're saying something about component, we're just talking about a number of files that is being generated by the Angular CLI. All right, we'll proceed to services. Of course, services is very important. You can see on my screen here that we're having someone making a phone call, providing a service, maybe a call center service to a client or a customer. The same role service plays as well in components and an Angular application. And it serves the components with what they need to function properly. Now we could get, okay, let me bring it a little bit down so that you get what I mean. You may come into a city. I take a city as a project that has applications, and the city is just all our applications. And the buildings in the city represent the components in an Angular application. Then we can provide a power supply. No, though in Nigeria, that is not too okay, that each house have to have source of power supply, rather than having one national power supply, powering from a national grid. That has its own advantage. Of course, reduce carbon footprint and pollution in the community, just like we're having generators all over the place. It ought not to be. The same thing as well, if we take the code we're supposed to, each component are supposed to use, we put them in the component, it will make maintaining the component very difficult, maintain the business logic, the code very difficult. But if all the components, okay, the whole houses in this city need light, don't give them individual generators. Rather, just create one single generator that will serve the whole of the houses in the city. Now, that is where the service comes in. We now have a different code that acts as a services, and it has what other component needs. Then it supplies them from that point. With that, we can maintain service on its own. We can test it individually. The code that is in the service, we can test it, maintain it, and it makes development easy. So with this command, ng generate service name, that service is being generated for us, and we proceed. All right, we'll go into a role of schematics. What is schematics? If we're talking about schematics, let me give you a simple illustration or a definition of it. A schematic is just a simple drawing that engineers, builders use for building their structures. That tells us that it's a blueprint and it's basic. Just like I see in my screen, with this, we can wire a number of houses with this circuit diagram here. It's more or less like a blueprint. So that is what schematics implies. So it's a template code generator that supports complex logic. And simply, it's just a set of instructions for transforming a project, a software project, by either generating it from scratch or modifying the existing code. So the role of schematics in Angular application. The Angular CLI uses schematics to generate and modify Angular projects, different parts. Just like I've seen also that with one drawing of a car, the plan, the blueprints, we can multiply each of the cars, producing the same version a number of times, just having the blueprint. I'm getting a noise here. Benjamin, could you mute everybody? All right, look at Angular's JSON schema. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Tolu Lope, mute yourself.
Please mute. All right. Thank you for that, Victor. So looking at JSON schema in Angular, and what does this do? It works in hand with the schematics, with the blueprint. But its sole purpose is to have the options that developer passes from the command line. Different, maybe ng build, you want to build an app, ng build. You want to serve the app on a local machine, ng serve. You want to test the app, ng test. So the schema validates the build, serve, test, all those commands, and check whether they are in order. And that's why you can see on the code I have here that we have name here, then a little description, what this option does on the command line. That is the name of the new workspace. Then we also have a skip install. That is in the process of installing maybe some dependencies that an application may need. And there are some dependencies that you don't want to come into the application. So with this option, skip install, you can skip all those dependencies. And now look at the rule of schema.json. Now on the process of you typing on the command line, maybe ng serve or ng build or ng, yes, let me say ng build, and you pass an option. And along the line, you, instead of putting double L at the end of install, you put one L. Now this is rule of schema. That command goes to the schema. It runs through what is on, it has, the list of command options it has on its template, and no one matches with the command you have given from the command line. It throws back an error to you, telling you that this command is not recognized because it has gone through its record and no command name matches with what it has. So it throws it back to you and tell you that this, what you just passed on, is wrong. Then the developer begin to check up and know where, looking for where the problem is. So that is actually the role of schema.json in the Angular CLI. All right, so move to the next one, which is Angular JSON file. Of course, it's a JavaScript object notation. It encapsulates a lot of code blocks in it. Of course, we'll just look at a little detail in our next slide. But before we proceed to our next slide, let's just touch on this. Now, we're looking at the top of it here. We're seeing the app, my app, the key here, and having an object as its value. Then inside we have the root, simply telling us about the root of the project. Sorry. Okay, we have the root, simply telling us about the root of the project. Now, if you look at the second, this thing is a source root. Actually, in an application, that's SRC, means the source of the main application itself. It's a folder actually that Angular CLI generates in the course of raising a project for you when you pass a command. So then the next one, it tells us that that's an application as well. The project type is an application. Then there's another folder inside the source folder as well. So it's just giving you details. Once you run the Angular CLI, pull up your Angular CLI and run a command, the Angular JSON takes up the command and begin to execute it based on the packages and the dependencies that you already have installed, that NPM brought in when you installed NPM. So that is actually what the Angular.json keeps. Now, if we move to the next code blocks that I have here, the first one there, you are seeing architects. And if you look up, you will see the schematics I mentioned earlier, which has the plan. Now, if you come to a normal setting, if you want to build a house, you consult maybe the town planning service, get some blueprints, maybe consult some surveyors, and they draw up, or the architect, they draw up a plan. Now, the schematics carries the plan, just like I mentioned earlier. It's a blueprint, it's the template. Now, the architect is there to execute, to take up the plan, take up the blueprint, and work based on the blueprint. The same parity of reasoning in this Angular.json, that's what actually happens. When you generate a schematics, or when you run your basic command and you want to generate a project, Angular has a default schematics already. It works with it, gets the architect into it, then other things are set for you to proceed with. Now, once you have developed your project and you want to build, there's a plan already for you, and there are commands already available for you, provided by the CLI. So when you run an ng build, you want to build up an application after you have build your code, type your codes and all that, you do ng build. Simply, the schematic is here, the architect is invoked. Then the architect takes the plan and call upon the builder. Now, inside of these code blocks, we'll drill into it in the next slide. So, but on a high level view, we're having build, serve, end-to-end testing, linting, server, and the rest. So let me just go to the next slide. So this is a VS Code of a project we just generated using the CLI. Look at line 16. You see the architect there. Now, when you look at line 17, you see build there. When you type ng build from the CLI, the architect is invoked, and the build is an object, a key inside the architect's code block. So the architect calls the builder. It is time to build, because we have received a command from the command line, from the user or from the developer, that he wants to build this application. Then the architect holds the plan to monitor the builder and ensure that it builds according to the plan. So if you look at line 18, you'll be seeing the builder there being called, and the builder, just as its name implies, is to build. And it invokes the Angular dev kit build package in our NPM, and it runs into action, gather all the dependencies, and build our app for us. What a great servant we have. All right. As you proceed to test, if you run ng test as well, it calls the Karma builder to build. If it runs ng serve, the dev server builder goes into action, and the architect monitors all these because they are under it. Of course, in our normal setting, if you go to a construction site, you find the architect at the top.
Echo, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now? All right, you find the architect at the top. You find the architect at the top, and you find the builder. So the architect gives the instruction, holds the plan, and monitors it, and everything is being built according to the plan. The same parity of reason, that's what happens in Angular application and Angular framework actually. So in summary, Angular CLI is a tool for building, developing, scaffolding, maintaining, and testing our Angular application. It is also recommended for best practice in the course of your build. So evaluation. We do have some questions here to evaluate my audience before finally come to the end of the presentation today. If you don't mind, you can unmute your mic. So the first question, what does the CLI mean? Anybody can help us with the answer? We still have the options there.
Online interface.
Thank you very much. Online interface. Then what are some of the contents of the architect JSON block code in the angular.json file? We have project there.
Build.
Properties. Yes, build. Thank you very much. We have build because it's under the architect, and architect gives a command to build once it receives an option from the developer from the command line. Okay, so in conclusion, the mission of the Angular CLI actually is to improve development productivity and make work easy and ensure best practices in the course of development. Thank you for joining me today, and we have come to the end of this presentation. And if I have any question, you can ask.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deepa. I think we have come to the end of today's thing. There are no questions from the
Sorry, Mr. Benjamin, before you end the class, I'm tired announcing again. Up to now, we don't have a single update on external event, and I hope I'll not be, how do I put it now? There wouldn't be any issue of injustice or unfairness or lack of consideration when we start posting. According to Mr. Bade, he was given like a week or thereabout to have at least one person who had attended something. You can't know everything all. We're told to just go around and find something, but it's like nobody has done something about it. I just want to encourage everybody, please, let's do something. Let's put it there. It's important. It's part of our self-development, and it's on its own. It can actually you can take 2 hours from Beacon by writing to them and say you want to do something, and then post the report. So I seek everybody's indulgence to please, let's do justice to that. At least, even if you have not attended, there should be one that you have seen that you would like to attend. You can then bring it up and say, okay, by so date,